Previously, suddenly someone touched Mr. Liu's shoulder. Captain Jiang tells Mr. Liu that he helped him to target Gao Peng and provoke his relationship with other groups, so the favor Mr. Liu did for him in the Black Ember Forest is over. Mr. Liu tells Captain Jiang that they were a lifelong friend and they should help each other more, but Captain Jiang disagreed and said one rule is one rule, they are not friends. Captain Jiang turns around at Mr. Liu while thinking that Gao Peng helped him so much. In order to tie him to his boat he has to set him up, and Captain Jiang called Mr. Liu Old Fox. Back at the apartment, Gao Peng arrives at his home in silence, which made Dazai confused. Gao Peng opens his television and saw in the news that the Blue Devil genetic liquid, which was launched by the Jilongbang group, has been exposed to a serious side effect. Also in the Neon region, there have been many cases of malignant mutations in the beasts taking the Blue Magic Beast genetic optimizer. Jilongbang group announced the global takeback of the Blue Devil genetic optimizer, and users who have already purchased the product can return it for free at the original price at Jilongbang stores. Gao Peng was watching the news. Suddenly his cell phone rang and he saw it was Mr. Liu. Gao Peng answers the call and asks what he can do for Mr. Liu. Mr. Liu apologizes again to Gao Peng for the incidents that happened today. Gao Peng responded that it doesn't matter and that he was not too mad about it. Mr. Liu said Gao Peng shouldn't be worried because if his friends didn't respect him today, it means also they disrespect him today. But before Mr. Liu can finish his words, Gao Peng ended the call. Gao Peng angrily thinks he can't blame those people for thinking they can fool him because he doesn't have the strength to say to all the people with evil intentions to go away. Gao Peng looked at his television again and said, for now, he can only play by the so-called rules until he was strong enough. The news showed a man named Han Ning, a 21-year-old contestant who won the first Yangcheng Dog King contest with his beast named Starfall Great. It was level 39. And a leader-level beast with perfect quality. The news also said that Han Ning is a university student and is currently studying in his junior year of Yangcheng University of Science and Technology. Gao Peng said he won't take long to be strongest. The next day, at Fei Peng's Studio Beast workroom, Gao Peng was mixing something with Dummy. When Gao Peng thinks he blends properly the mixture of something, then he poured it into another mixture. Gao Peng gave the medicine to Dummy and ordered Dummy to drink it, which made Dummy confused. On the other hand, Jie and her friends arrived at Gao Peng's studio, and her other friend asks her what Gao Peng looked like, which made Jie turn around to her friend angrily. Jie goes to her friend and tickles her because of her mocking. Quanquan welcomes them and asks them if they have an appointment. Jie asks Quanquan why they need an appointment when there is no one in their studio. Quanquan said if they don't have an appointment, she can contact the boss for them to confirm the time. Jie remembers her dad said Gao Peng has a high level of beast training and is simply the first genius in Chang'an. But the only bad thing is that the fees of Gao Peng are very high. Suddenly they hear something scream which made them can't breathe because the scream is so scary. On the other hand, at the beast workroom, Dummy was in the process of evolving. Dummy evolved and his monster name changed to a skeleton dead ape. His level increased to 16 and his quality changed to perfect. Dummy attribute is the spirit system, and his fear is the light system. Also, Dummy acquired characteristic is the blood silk heart, which made Gao Peng happy. Gao Peng noticed that Dummy gained characteristics because of his promotion. Gao Peng clicked Dummy characteristics and he saw that the blood silk heart effect has two passive effects. One, consume a certain number of blood silk and energy cohesion out of the blood silk heart. When the blood silk heart exists, will improve the skeleton dead ape's all around physical quality, and when the blood silk heart is destroyed, passive effect will disappear. Effect 2. Activation of the blood silk heart can trigger the heart resonance with which the heart can be manipulated to beat. Gao Peng excitedly thinks that with the characteristics, Dummy's combat power will be greatly enhanced. But Gao Peng look at Dummy and thinks it's not very convenient to go out with Dummy when he was so big. Gao Peng goes outside of the workroom and then he asks Quanquan to find something to help Dummy cover up because Dummy's look is not good for the street, which made Quanquan shocked because Gao Peng promoted Dummy to a royal beast in just a little time. Gao Peng noticed the girl in front of him, and remember it was Jie, Mr. Liu's daughter. Gao Peng thinks Jie was there because he hung up on Mr. Liu's phone directly, and he thinks the old fox was a little bit confused about his thoughts, and that is why he sends his daughter to test his attitude. However, Gao Peng focus on Jie's friend's beast because he thinks it is quite interesting because it adapted to a whole new ecological niche with the emptiness of the sea. Jie asks Gao Peng to look at her beast. Then Gao Peng tells Jie she doesn't have to call him Mr. Gao because they are the same age, so he's a little uncomfortable with the formal name, which made Jie confused. Gao Peng said his rules to Jie should know the standard of his charge and pay the bills first. Then Gao Peng said her beast was only an elite level, normal quality mint cat, charged 60 credits according to his charging standard. Gao Peng decided to forget Mr. Liu's bullying because he thinks Jie doesn't know it. Then he tells Jie that he will pay for the materials needed to upgrade the quality of her mint cat for her father's sake. which made Jae-yu very thankful to him. Gao Peng asks where her beast is, then Jae-yu realizes her cat missing and begins to panic. Her friend pointed to Jae-yu's cat, who currently shaking in fear because the cat saw Dummy. The cat run towards Jae-yu and touched Jae-yu buns, which made Gao Peng said the cat is a pervert. Gao Peng asks Jae-yu's friend where did she buy her jellyfish because he has never seen a beast with attributes like her jellyfish before, so he's a little curious. The girl said her jellyfish is hardly an imperial beast, and it is just a small pet that can barely be used as a handy wallet. Then the girl gets her phone out of her beast. The girl explained her floating jellyfish was originally a specialty of Pingcheng, and recently a group of traders imported a lot from there, and now they are selling jellyfish in the commercial street of Wook Square. Gao Peng remembers the direction because he plans to get his third beast there. In Wook Square, a bunch of people were watching the jellyfish perform. Other people also buy some jellyfish. Gao Peng asks the seller if he can look at the floating jellyfish. The seller agrees and gives the jellyfish he was holding. Gao Peng sees that the jellyfish is level 1 and its quality is normal. Then Gao Peng asks the man if he can see all the rest of their floating jellyfish because he likes to pick one for himself. The seller lead the way while Gao Peng followed him. When they reached the door, the seller opened it and Gao Peng saw the rest of the jellyfish in the container. The seller said according to their records, the birth of the floating jellyfish was due to a group of jellyfish that happened to be infected and mutated by the Space Force at the beginning of the catastrophe and settled in the sea for several years afterward. The jellyfish multiplied and then the jellyfish almost eaten by other monsters to the point that it almost get their species exterminated. The seller also said that the jellyfish only had a space attribute and the ability to float in mid-air and open a small dimension space in its body, but the jellyfish almost has no attack power. Also, thanks to the jellyfish's good looks and bad taste, it still exists. Gao Peng starts to look at the jellyfish and realizes that the level of the jellyfish here is not too different from the one they selling outside. Suddenly Gao Peng was shocked because he saw something. He saw one jellyfish float actively while the other jellyfish floated quietly, and Gao Peng feel that the jellyfish is not the same as the other jellyfish. Gao Peng asks the seller how much that jellyfish was, while the jellyfish is floating fast on the side. The seller said the jellyfish he wants is rare mutant species with the perfect quality of speed variation, and the floating jellyfish king. The seller said he can sell it to Gao Peng at 100 credits. Gao Peng responded that the seller has to be conscientious in business because he recognizes the mutation of the floating jellyfish king, and Gao Peng said the seller's price is overstated. Then Gao Peng suggests 50 credits. The seller agreed to his suggestion. Then Gao Peng paid to the seller using his phone, while thinking that the seller accept his offer without even hesitation, and it seems that even in 50 credits they have still a profit. The seller gets Gao Peng jellyfish while saying if he had other friends who want to buy floating jellyfish, he can bring his friends to him, then he'll give him a discount. But Gao Peng is not buying anything what the man said. Also, Gao Peng thinks he really didn't lose anything to the seller because the monster named floating jellyfish. It was level 4 and elite quality. Floating jellyfish attributes are space and wind and its preference is sweet juice. The floating jellyfish has 3 weaknesses, 1 thunder type, 2 ice type, and 3 fear of fish and birds. Gao Peng grabbed his third beast and said it looked like a balloon. Then he named it Silly. In Gao Peng's apartment, Daze is sleeping on the pillow on the ground. When Daze heard the doorknob move, Daze looked up to see Gao Peng enter holding a jellyfish with his hands while saying the jellyfish is their new family member. That made Daze become stone. Then Daze runs to enter Gao Peng's room, then closes the door hard. Gao Peng thinks Daze learned to be jealous. Gao Peng ready his fist with a black aura around him while saying he will fix Daze. Gao Peng called Daze because he bought him dried bread worms. Daze heard it. Then Daze stand behind the door while Gao Peng explaining in order to help Daze upgrade. He issued a high price quest to buy the crystal core of the leader level lightning monster. Then Daze slowly opened the door. Gao Peng asked Daze if he was hungry. Daze said yes. Suddenly Gao Peng raised the food of Daze in the air while saying how dare Daze slam the door on him. Daze shouts at Gao Peng to give the food to him and Gao Peng should knock it off. Gao Peng angrily asks Daze how he learned to curse, while Dummy was playing with Silly. Gao Peng smacks Daze and turns around at Dizzy Daze. Then he walked toward where Silly is and said he doesn't have a high level at the moment, so he should have enough mental power to try the contract now with Silly. Gao Peng tried to make a contract with Silly which made Silly shocked. Gao Peng saw that Silly's consciousness space is even smaller and more fragile than Daze's at the beginning, and it was troublesome. Also, Silly's consciousness is too restless. When he tried to make a contract with Silly, he feels like he's a monster who wants to abduct a child. Then Gao Peng stopped the contract and said he won't force a contract on Silly for a while, until Silly lowered his guard and grow attached to them over time. Gao Peng decided to bring Silly to school with him tomorrow so Silly can develop a good relationship with him. The next day, at school, Ting greeted Gao Peng good morning with a weird expression. Gao Peng greet back with silly in his head, while other student thinks it's an ugly hat. Then Gao Peng gets something at silly, then he offered his water bottle to Ting. Ting asks if the thing on his head is a hat. Gao Peng responded no, and explained that it was floating jellyfish, an imperial beast with spatial abilities. Ting said she heard about the jellyfish, and it's just timid. Then she changed the topic, and asks Gao Peng if he have seen the training monster for today. Gao Peng said no, then they look at the monster in the cage. Gao Peng saw the purple gold scorpion and he thinks his training for today is a tricky test. Ting asks Gao Peng if he's still going to do the training again today. The other student said that it seems the extra bonus points for today's first win are Gao Peng again, and they can't help it. Then the other student said Gao Peng is strong and has a high win rate, so they can refer to Gao Peng's style of play to beat their opponents and get some points. But Gao Peng said he can't be the first one on the team every time, and it was not fair, so he let others be first for today's training, which made the other students shocked. Suddenly, one student with his beast behind him said since Gao Peng is willing to give up first place, he'll apply to be the first one to do the training. Gao Peng knows that his classmate beast is named Chicken Dragon, and it was the only elite level imperial beast in their field other than Dazai, and it is already level 11, but unfortunately it is normal quality, but it is also enough to try the depth of the purple gold scorpion. Gao Peng asks Dazai if he saw it, but when Gao Peng turns around he saw Dazai looking at a small beast, and Dazai wants to eat it. Gao Peng punched Dazai's head while saying Dazai just knows how to eat. Then Gao Peng orders Dazai to observe the habits, attack and attacking style of the purple gold scorpion because he'll put him on later. Renbai waved the red flag and said go, then the chicken dragon walked towards the purple gold scorpion. The chicken and scorpion look at each other intensely. Then the scorpion attacked the chicken. Fortunately, the chicken avoided it. The chicken tried to attack back using its feet, but the scorpion grabbed the chicken's feet using its claw. Then the scorpion attacks the chicken dragon using its stinger. The owner of the chicken dragon beast shouts that the situation is not good. Then Renbai said fortunately, the purple gold scorpion is not poisonous. Otherwise, the scorpion attack alone would have put down the student beast. Renbai also said lucky for the student his chicken dragon was strong enough that the scorpion only pierces the muscle with its barb, and the scorpion's rear ringtail is not stiff enough to do more damage. The chicken got angry, then the chicken pierced his beak into the scorpion. The owner of the chicken said they win, but Gao Peng knows the fight is not over. The chicken attacks the scorpion repeatedly using its beak. Then the scorpion got angry and grabbed the chicken's other feet. Then the scorpion pulled the chicken's feet in the opposite direction, which made the chicken scream and shake in pain. The owner of the chicken called his beast worried, but the chicken's eggs broke, which made the chicken cry in pain. The other student felt the chicken's pain, then Renbai beast enter the cage, then look at the scorpion while Renbai ordered the scorpion to stop. The scorpion ungrabbed the chicken feet, which made the chicken fall down to the ground. Then the chicken ran crying while its owner chasing on it. Renbai asks who else wants to fight the purple gold scorpion. Then the students shake their heads. Renbai said when Gao Peng's beast was the first to take the field in every challenge, the other student was upset because they think that he was biased and underestimated everyone. Then Renbai asks them why no one wants to step up now. The students tell Renbai to choose the student with a good grade to go first. Then Renbai look at Gao Peng and asks if he wants to go next. Gao Peng happily said okay while Dazai and Silly were with him. Dazai entered the cage where the purple golden scorpion was, then the scorpion glared at Dazai. Ting looked at Gao Peng and said Dazai is powerful, but the strength shown by the scorpion is not too timid. Gao Peng didn't answer, but he knows that Ting is right because the scorpion is probably hiding its clumsiness, and he can only believe in Dazai. The scorpion attacked Dazai, but Dazai avoided it. The scorpion attacked Dazai again, and Dazai got hit in his body. Then Dazai got angry and attacked the scorpion using his tail. The scorpion got dizzy. Then Dazai used the opportunity and attacked the scorpion again. Dazai bit the scorpion and the skin of it came off. Then Dazai wrapped his body around the seriously injured scorpion, which made Gao Peng and Silly happy. Also, Gao Peng classmate cheered for Dazai too. Ting excitedly said as expected of Gao Peng, Dazai was so dangerous, but Dazai's master's face haven't changed a bit. Gao Peng laughed and said everything was happening as he expected it to be, but actually, he was so nervous just now that his heart is beating so fast. Suddenly, Renbai orders Gao Peng to call his beast back. When Gao Peng looked at Dazai eating the scorpion. Renbai said there are not many monsters that can be used for practice, and if Gao Peng beast eats the scorpion he'll have to pay for reimbursement. Dazai notices the noise and looks at them. The other student who's watching said Dazai hasn't been fully domesticated yet, he's too cruel. Gao Peng whistled to call Dazai, which made Dazai pissed. But still, Da Zai walked towards where Gao Peng and Ting was, while the other student give away for Da Zai in fear. Gao Peng takes out something from his pocket while telling Da Zai to don't eat everything indiscriminately. Then Gao Peng and Silly clean Da Zai with a towel while Gao Peng tells Da Zai what he will do if Da Zai got a bad stomach. And Gao Peng said Da Zai scares the other students. The other student tells Gao Peng to cut his crap because he's cruel. Ting tells Gao Peng to don't mind the other student because they are just scared of Da Zai. Gao Peng said just now they were fighting monsters in cages while protected by instructors and Silver Moon wolves, and he somewhat pity those monsters, but Gao Peng asked the other student what if those monsters were in wild, and not in the cage. Did they think in a real battle the monsters will pity them too? Gao Peng also said they are there to learn to fight with that half-assed attitude, and if the other student can't do it they better quit, which made the other student angry. Renbai clapped his hand to make the student quiet, and he said Gao Peng said is not wrong. Renbai said he will introduce something to them because he thinks basic training is not enough for them, and starting tomorrow they'll be going to field training, so they need to think before signing up. Renbai said the duration is 1 week and the school has approved the leave. They can go home and discuss it with their guardians and parents. Also, the registration is 5 credits. The student was excited because after waiting for so long, they finally going to actual combat training. But Gao Peng thinks the field camp training, the scope is a bit too big. The other student asks Renbai why they need to pay for registration, and they ask if they shouldn't be allowed in for free. Renbai responded they can choose not to go or go to a private training field. The other student thinks it was costly and doesn't have monster quality, and they think it will cost at least 20 credits. The other students were upset because they can't afford it because they were poor. Renbai said aside from payment, there's another method. They can sign a contract with the military alliance. That way all the expenses will be managed by the military alliance. The students who chose to sign will only have to work for the military alliance for 8 years, then they will be free to do what they please. Also additionally, if they get admitted to a military academy, the time spent there will be counted as part of 8 years. Ting said they know that 5 credits are not an official number for an average family, and this official policy is very humane. Gao Peng thinks the policy is very clever because the military lets them choose between military service and a military academy, but they still have to do 4 years of mandatory military service. Gao Peng knows whether to spend 4 years in an academy and 4 years in military, or 8 years as a warrior. The military method is indeed very cost-effective. Renbai also reminds them that if they sign, they need to sign a death agreement certificate too. One student asks if it means that there is a chance of death. Renbai responded that the entrance exam for the Imperial Envoy Specialists is different from other exams, so they must treat the opportunity for special training well. And Renbai said they may not die, but a potentially fatal injury, and they'll be removed from the training. The other student laughs at the student who asks the question, teeing up his fist to Gao Peng and asks if she and Gao Peng can come to the company tomorrow. Gao Peng and Ting bump fist and Gao Peng said he'll be honored. The next day, the student was on the military bus going to the valley. The military driver purposely made the bus stop. Then the driver apologized and explained that he didn't see the stone in the road. But Gao Peng knows the driver purposely stopped the bus because the driver doesn't like their noise. Gao Peng remembers before he left his apartment, he knocked on Tang Tang's door, but there was no answer. Tang Tang also didn't answer the phone. And Gao Peng knows that her strength is not weak, so there shouldn't be anything wrong. But Gao Peng also thinks Tang Tang's sudden disappearance has something to do with the secret she had never been able to tell him. Suddenly, the bus driver stopped the bus, which made the students crash forward onto another chair. Gao Peng was angry because the driver do it again. Then the other student complains to the military driver that he's bullying them, and the driver said he didn't stop the bus on purpose this time. Finally, the students arrived at their destination. The students line up outside the valley, while the military instructor explains that the valley behind him was their wilderness training base, and every inch of the valley has been cleared. Normal level and elite level monsters are retained. The instructor also assured the students that there will never be any leader-level monsters in the valley. The military instructor showed a watch and explained that the watch is an identity watch that contained a positioning system and an emergency button. The instructor also said they need to wear the watch and their task is to live for a week. Gao Peng wears the watch while the instructor said the student can't quit in the middle of the field training. Otherwise, they are considered to have given up. The instructor asks the students if they have questions. One student asks if there is a fixed supply point in the training ground. The instructor responded that there are safe houses in the valley made of special steel that only monsters above the leader level can break through the safe house's defenses, and in the house, there is a certain amount of food. The instructor said if they really just want to get through 7 days, it's not impossible and it depends on how they choose. Then the instructor orders them to go inside the valley. The students go into the valley one by one, then Ting and Gao Peng saw each other. One of the military shout in megaphones to order them to move faster, and if they are accidentally eaten by a monster, the positioning system will allow the military to find the monster and avenge their death. All the students finally entered the valley, then the valley door closed. Ting walked toward where Gao Peng and Da Zai were while Gao Peng and Da Zai looked up at the bird in the tree. Gao Peng looked at Ting and explained that the monster named bird is sparrow. It likes to gather in a moist and watery environment. Also, the sparrow is very sensitive to rain, and if it rains, the sparrow flies to the tree, so the sparrow will be known as a rainbird. Ting said he remembered the bird in the weather signal tower in general cities. The power of the rainbirds is very weak, but the speed is very fast. The bird fly away, which made Gao Peng look at it and said he still have to go to the wild to take a look because, unlike a monotonous city, the wild has the richest kinds of monsters, which is a monster's paradise. Ting said a student is a student, everyone else is in a hurry to get into the valley, but Gao Peng has already started to observe the environment, so Ting thinks it's really such a mentality that makes Gao Peng capable. But Gao Peng looked at her and said no because the people in the valley were just so crowded and he just wanted the other students to all pass, which made Ting shocked and asked Gao Peng if it's time for them to go. Gao Peng said yes and Ting and their beasts follow him. But Gao Peng wondered if he saw a figure in the tree canopy. Day 1 of their training in the valley started. Gao Peng and Ting were walking in the valley together when they found a small monster flower in the way. Then Gao Peng and Ting with their beast proceeded to continue their way. Suddenly Ting saw a camouflage green-skinned iron house not far away. Gao Peng and Ting decided to go in the house, and when they opened the door, they saw a double deck, a table, and water bottles. Ting said there are not many beds in the safe house, which means their instructors don't want them to huddle too much. Gao Peng tells Ting that there are no leader-level monsters in the valley, and there are less than 5% of elite-level monsters, so there is no point in training in the field if she has to huddle always. Gao Peng noticed something and said each bed has 5 boxes of compressed cookies and 10 water bottles, so he thinks if they eat sparingly, they can basically make it through the week. Therefore, the military has fully considered the true strength of the students. Otherwise, if the students had to fight against monsters and find food by themselves, the military staff may be reduced. When Gao Peng turned around, he saw Ting changed into a suit. Then Ting asked him if he don't want to change into his protective suit. Ting explained that there are still some small mosquitoes in the jungle that are quite poisonous, and if they get bitten, they'll be in trouble. Gao Peng responded no, and if that happens he'll just apply the herbs, which made Ting confused. Then Gao Peng changed the topic and said they should turn around and tried to get some meat because he don't want to eat compressed cookies for 7 days. Gao Peng said for their safe house, they can rely on Lotus Seed's original size to get out of the way quickly so they can return to the safe house even if something happens. Ting said Gao Peng is really thoughtful. The team of Gao Peng started to find food. Lotus returns to its original size and leads away, while Da Zai behind him can't see the way. Then Gao Peng tells Ting that they should look first for a nearby water source, which is generally surrounded by natural hunting grounds. Suddenly Ting said the fragrance of the flowers and plants in the woods is too strong, and there is a rotten smell that she almost fainted. Ting feels dizzy and tried to hold onto the tree to balance herself. Then Gao Peng hold her arms and sign her to be silent. Gao Peng tells Ting to make her Lotus Seed hit the branch as much as possible, while Ting look at Gao Peng and wonders why Gao Peng wants Lotus Seed hit the tree for no reason because the tree is look nothing special. But Ting also thinks in school, Gao Peng's judgment was always accurate, and maybe Gao Peng has found some clues. Ting said he should trust Gao Peng. Ting touches Lotus Seed and makes it go. Then Lotus's seed run toward the tree, which made the part of the tree shake in fear while assuring itself they can't see him. Lotus Seed hit the tree hard and the snake comes flying out of the tree. The snake hit its body on every branch of the tree, then it falls down to the ground. Ting was shocked and thanked Gao Peng because if not for Gao Peng reminding her, she would have been trapped. Ting asked Gao Peng what kind of monster is the snake because its disguise is too good. Gao Peng responded that the snake monster's name is Green Tree Snake. The green color of the snake mimics a tree branch. The flesh of the snake contains traces of toxins that can be eaten by monsters, but not by humans. Suddenly Gao Peng remembers that he signed a contract with Da Zai, and theoretically, all the damage he suffers will be transferred to Da Zai, which had a toxic resistance, and that means he can actually eat the snake. Gao Peng also heard that the more poisonous the snake is, the more delicious the meat. Suddenly something jumps out of the tree that made a noise, then Gao Peng look at it, but sees nothing and wonders if he heard a noise, while the snake is hiding behind the tree shaking in fear. Ting called Gao Peng and said she thinks there seems to be a water source up ahead because they saw a pond. Ting touched the water and said she thinks the water is fresh and had no odor. Gao Peng agreed and said as long as they have a clean water source, their chance of making it through the 7 days is greatly improved. Suddenly something spits on Gao Peng's leg. Gao Peng panicked in confusion and saw that the monster is named Green Frog. It's level 2, and its quality is normal. The frog's preference is it likes to spit on other creatures, and the number of its weaknesses are 3, 1 thunder system, 2 soil system, and 3 ice system. Also, the frog's status is it's too tired of other creatures spitting on it. Gao Peng thinks the green-skinned frog is a psychopath. It only likes to spit on other creatures, and hates others spitting on it. And the most important thing is that there are no creatures so bored that they'll spit back at the frog. Gao Peng was ready to turn around and decided to forget it because one more thing is better than one less thing. Also, they still need to think about how to efficiently clean the pond. But the frog spits on him again, which made Gao Peng angry and made the frog happy. Gao Peng spit back at the frog, which made the frog shocked. Gao Peng confidently thinks he gave the frog a chance, but the frog didn't treasure it. Gao Peng knows he had the system, but he still can't cure the frog's little attitude. The frog cries and cries more loudly. Ting asks Gao Peng if there are many frogs in the pond. Gao Peng called Ting name while sweating because he saw many frogs in the pond, and Ting asked him what was wrong because Ting didn't know what was behind her. The frog was going to attack them. Then Gao Peng grabbed Ting's hand and shout run while he was dragging Ting. Lotus Seed blocked all the attacks while they all running. Finally, they all run far enough to settle in a safe place. Ting said who would have thought that one day she would be so scared by a group of frogs that she would turn around and run. Gao Peng, who lying on the ground exhausted, said Ting shouldn't underestimate frogs. 1 or 2 is not terrible, but in the pond, there are at least 1,000 frogs. Ting realizes that Gao Peng is the one who caused the frogs to attack them, while Lotus's seed behind her crying. Gao Peng stand up and said they should sort out the situation. He remembers that behind the woods to the north is the pond of green-skinned frogs, to the west is the direction of the gate of the valley, and there are few trees and no threatening large creatures along the way. Then to the south is a dense forest with tracks of large carnivorous monsters. Most of the trees there are very thick and not conducive to the movement of lotus seeds. And to the east, there is a small steep slope, and up the slope is a spacious meadow with signs of herbivore gnawing. Ting asks Gao Peng if he wants to expand the range a little further because the information they got was not enough. But Gao Peng said now in a strange voice. Then Gao Peng excitedly said now is the time to back to cooking, which leave Ting disappointed. Gao Peng tells Ting to relax because the exercise for today is enough, and Gao Peng said if Ting is too nervous on the first day, she will get tired very quickly. Then Ting said they should quickly find some ingredients that they can eat. Gao Peng responded no need. Then he lifted the dead green snake and said it's fresh, which made Ting silent. Then Gao Peng showed his ingredients. Ting asks Gao Peng with a confused look, and said when did he all collect the ingredients, but before she can complete her question, she changed her question and asked where Gao Peng put the ingredients. Gao Peng responded that they are in the survival of the wilderness, and he must always be prepared for it, which made Ting speechless. Meanwhile, the military is looking at them using number 17 CCTV. The military was observing all the students in the valley using CCTV to make every student safe. One military who was looking at Gao Peng team asked the man observing the monitor if Ting Lotus Seed was that one Zhang Baron said. The man said yes and explained that the beast and its feature matched. The military man tells the other military when he is faced with the green-skinned frog, he can only run away, but if he is running away, he shouldn't forget to find something to chuck at it while running. The other military responded that if they think about it, that's survival ability too. The colonel said what they think is too simple, and they shouldn't forget that Gao Peng is only a student who has been trained for a short period of time. The colonel also said whether it's Gao Peng use of the terrain, Gao Peng mastery o wildness survival skills, or his determination to give up when things go wrong, Gao Peng has outperformed most teams. Then the colonel orders the man to give him focused monitoring of Gao Peng. Meanwhile, in the valley, Ting said she'll have to take a good look at Gao Peng's work, but when she tried to open the door, she was shocked. Gao Peng noticed her reaction and asks what's wrong. Ting looks at Gao Peng and said the door seems to be locked back. Ting knocks on the door and shouts to the person inside to open the door. The person inside the door said it was full in the house and shouted at them to go somewhere else. Ting turns to look at Gao Peng and said that it's true that there are no such things as a safe house in the wild, and it seems that they can only think of themselves as unlucky when they meet such people. Gao Peng talked to the person inside the house and said it was getting dark, and they are only 2 people, they'll just sleep on the ground. But the person inside said they should go to another place before it gets dark. Ting was angry and going to attack the person inside the house, but Gao Peng grabbed her shoulder to stop her. Then Gao Peng said it's not worth it to be angry with that kind of people, and someone will soon educate the people inside the house. Ting calmed down and said Gao Peng is right. Then Ting touched Lotus Seed and said forget it and said they should continue on their way. But when she looked back she saw Gao Peng walking towards the house and asked him why he's going back. Gao Peng showed the chain in his hand, and then he locked the door using the chain outside, while the people inside shouted at him to ask if he really locked them inside. Gao Peng steps back, then Ting asks him where did he get the chain from. Gao Peng responded that he took it from the safe house, it was right next to the table. He guessed the instructors wanted them to use it to reinforce the door to increase safety, that's why he put the chain in his bag when they were coming out. Then Gao Peng groups walk away to the house smiling. Meanwhile, the military watching them was impressed by Gao Peng mindset, and the colonel said Gao Peng has potential. One military said Gao Peng is much better than the average student. But the coming up next is the highlight, because in the wild with monsters everywhere, the only question is can they survive at night. On the other hand, Gao Peng team was heading the same way again to find a safe house, but they didn't know there's something behind them, a monster who was following them. Ting was exhausted and she thinks they can only rest in the wild for the night. Gao Peng also said if they continue the search it won't be safe, and there are no caves to be found. Then Gao Peng pointed to the tree and said the trunk of the tree is straight, and the height of 3 or 4 meters above the ground, also it happens to be bifurcated. Gao Peng said they should build a simple shelter on the tree. Ting looked at the tree and agreed, then Ting ordered Lotus Seed to hit the tree. After that Gao Peng and Da Zai are above the building of their shelter for the night, while Ting was on the ground giving the wood to Da Zai. Finally, they have done making their shelter. Ting said their shelter can be regarded as makeshift, and when she looked at Gao Peng, she saw Gao Peng fast asleep. Then she checked Da Zai and Lotus and she saw that their beast is resting too. Ting grabbed her blanket in her bag and decided to take a rest too. Meanwhile, Tang Tang is watching them from another tree and said they are brave because they're sleeping in the wild with neither campfires nor night guard. Tang Tang said she will take the chance, but she heard something jump and she thinks something is coming. Tang Tang saw that it was a dark shadow panther, and she thinks it isn't very strong. Also Tang Tang assured herself that Gao Peng would probably be fine with his skill set. The panther jumped tree by tree while running toward them, and when it was near where Gao Peng and Ting were resting, Lotus Seed hears it, then Lotus stand up and makes a loud noise. Ting sits up and asks Lotus Seed what's wrong. Suddenly Gao Peng shouted at Ting to jump off the tree. Ting throws her blanket away and jumps off at Lotus Seed. Ting looks at Gao Peng and asks him what's happening. Gao Peng tells Ting to look at the tree in front, while Da Zai was looking at it ready to fight. Ting looks up and asks Gao Peng in a shaky voice if the monster is a shadow type or dark type monster. Then Ting looked back at Gao Peng and said the panther type strength is unknown, and the abilities of panther monsters are highest at night. Then Ting asked Gao Peng if they should run or fight. Gao Peng looked at the panther and saw that it was a normal grade level 15 dark shadow panther. Then he said that to make a run would expose their backs to the vicious beast. Running would only initiate the predatory instincts of the beast. Suddenly the monster jumps off the tree and attacks Gao Peng. Gao Peng shouted Da Zai's name. Da Zai blocked the panther's way, then Da Zai attacked the panther, but the panther avoided it, which made Da Zai shocked. The panther attacked Da Zai, but before Da Zai gets attacked, he used his electricity, which made the panther electrified. Then Da Zai takes the opportunity and bites the panther's body. Gao Peng knows that Da Zai uses electricity to paralyze the enemy to slow it down, and he thinks all the training they did had not been in vain. Even though Da Zai fighting an enemy with a higher level, Da Zai can still take care of it with ease. The panther attacked Da Zai using its tail, which made Da Zai unbite the panther. Then the panther jumps back to the branch of the tree, looking at them in pain. Suddenly something appeared behind the panther, which made the panther shake in fear. The panther shakingly turned behind him and saw a big snake wrapping in the tree. The snake opens its mouth and eats the panther whole. Gao Peng shouts run to Ting, Da Zai, and Lotus Seed. The snake looks at Gao Peng team running away, but it turns around and bites one of the tree branches. On the other hand, Tang Tang was watching everything in the other tree and she thinks the snake had no interest in Gao Peng. She also thinks the snake is quite tactful, otherwise her cover would have been blown if the snake and she had fought. Then she left. Meanwhile, the military saw the snake on CCTV and shout emergency. The military man asks their colonel if they should eliminate the mutant giant jungle anaconda. Commander Tan beside the colonel responded no need, because the giant jungle anaconda is gentle nature, and its offensive strength when initiating attacks is not strong. Commander Tan also said that it will just be another trial for students, and if they can't even deal with a trial of level, then they should just give up on going down their path when they still can. Colonel said Commander Tan is right. However, he ordered the military man to call the Golden Condor team to stand by for rescue, and if someone presses the emergency rescue button, the Golden team are to be set off immediately. The next day, Ting was leaning on Lotus Seed while sleeping. When Ting opened her eyes, Gao Peng asks if she was awake because she was just in time for their departure, which made Ting shocked and asks where they were going. Gao Peng responded that they left in hurry yesterday, so they need to look around the campsite because they left a lot of items behind. Ting said they don't know if that giant jungle anaconda is still there, and they also don't know any important information such as its weaknesses and attack pattern, so going back to yesterday's campsite is too dangerous. But Gao Peng said it precisely because they didn't collect any useful information that they need to go back. Gao Peng also explains that the level of understanding towards a monster is also a skill set of a monster trainer. They won't know when the information could save their life. Gao Peng turned around and said that Ting only becomes weaker if she still wishes to continue staying in a safe area like before. Gao Peng and Da Zai started to walk, then Ting shouted, "Wait for me." Ting ran toward where Gao Peng and Da Zai, while saying she can't catch up to them if they were walking so fast, and Ting asks Gao Peng what he would do if he encounter a monster. He can't ride Da Zai, and without her lotus seed they can't run fast. Ting finally caught up to Gao Peng and angry Da Zai. Ting apologized to Da Zai and said what she said was true. Gao Peng and Ting finally got back to the campsite, but they saw trees lying on the ground. Ting said if they didn't run fast enough yesterday, they would have ended up like the trees on the ground. Suddenly, Gao Peng notices something shiny in the tree, and when he looks closer, he saw that it was a material named Wood Space Heart. Gao Peng knows that the Wood Space Heart is a key ingredient for Silly's evolution, but Gao Peng never heard of it being sold in any of the markets. It's like no one even knows of the existence of Wood Space Heart. Then Gao Peng realizes that the Wood Space Heart is hidden inside the tree similar to bottle trees. Gao Peng also realizes that the mutant giant jungle anaconda could grow that big because it ate the rare Wood Space Heart. That's why no wonder the anaconda didn't chase after them yesterday, because it's just protecting its food. Gao Peng grabs the Space Wood Heart while planning to collect more Wood Space Hearts later. Then Gao Peng put the rare ingredients in his bag. Then Gao Peng decided to take advantage of the given opportunity during field training to find other rare ingredients. On the third day, Gao Peng saw shining tree ingredients. On the fourth day, Gao Peng saw something shining above the stone and ordered Da Zai to climb up to get it. On the fifth day, Gao Peng saw a purple crystal in the cave. And on the seventh day, the student was lining up outside the valley, and the colonel said all of them there are outstanding students who have passed the training, and he was very pleased. The colonel said the tentative date for the next combined training in the valley had been set for 3 weeks from now, and students that have attended the first training will be able to attend the next one for free. The colonel said their training has come to an end, and he hopes that all of the students learn plenty from it. Also, the next is a 3-day holiday, and their classes will resume in 3 days. The students were shouting in happiness because they can rest properly, and Ting said they can finally get in touch with the outside world. Gao Peng decided to send a message to Tang Tang, but when he opened his phone he was shocked to see that in the news billions of locusts swarm was in the city. In Chang'an City Center, at Walking Street, people were worried while watching the news on their phones. In the news reporting about the battle in the north, the reporter said they are at the front lines of the battle, and she said currently the Chang'an military troops have stopped the locust swarm outside of the front lines. Gao Peng was watching the news in his apartment with his beast, and the reporter said according to the research carried out by Director Feng of the Chang'an Monster Breeder Association, the monsters are called dead leaf locusts, and it extremely afraid of fire, and he said it's good news as they have successfully held the locusts using their weakness. Also, the swarm of locusts is estimated to have a few billion, and each dead leaf locust is at least 30 centimeters in length. Gao Peng said the situation doesn't look too good. Suddenly Gao Peng's phone rang and it was Director Feng. Gao Peng answers the call and greets Feng Zhu. Feng Zhu asks if he has come home after his training. Feng Zhu said the military just sent over a batch of the new type of voracious golden toads, and the military wants them to promote their grades. Then Feng Zhu asks Gao Peng if he had time to come down to the association tomorrow, and said Gao Peng will be paid for his services. Gao Peng asks Feng Zhu if it is possible that the military wants to use the voracious golden toads to deal with the dead leaf locusts, which made Feng Zhu and the other men with him are shocked. One man asks the other man how Gao Peng knows the military wants to use the voracious golden toads. Feng Zhu heard the men and said Gao Peng is correct. Using firearms to exterminate the locusts is quite inefficient, so the military wants them to research ways to improve the grade of the voracious golden toads by using the laws of nature. Gao Peng asks if the military wants to use the natural enemies of locusts, and he thinks the idea is quite plausible idea. Then Feng Zhu asks he was interested in participating in the research project, and Feng Zhu said the remuneration is negotiable. Gao Peng said agreed and asks if it is possible to change the remuneration to a commander tier electric type monster core crystal. Feng Zhu said that shouldn't be allowed. However, he does know of some people in the military, so it shouldn't be much of a problem. Then Feng Zhu said he'll see Gao Peng tomorrow and hung up. The next day, Gao Peng was in the association company, then someone called his name. When he looked back he saw Feng Zhu smiling at him while saying he had been waiting for Gao Peng for a while. The receptionist employees wondered who's the young man that their director Feng came down to greet in person. Feng Zhu said yesterday, the military brought 2 samples of the voracious golden toads, and then he asks Gao Peng to go inside the elevator. While they were inside the elevator, Gao Peng looked at Feng Zhu and asked if did he stay up all night. Feng Zhu said yes because he spent most of the night looking after the voracious golden toads. But Feng Zhu said he still hasn't made heads or tails. They arrived on their floor, the elevator door opened, and when Gao Peng go outside he saw a large space. Feng Zhu welcomed him to the Monster Breeder Association's research center. Then Feng Zhu pointed to their workspace, then he asks Gao Peng to take a look at the voracious golden toad. Gao Peng thinks voracious golden toads evolved from horned frogs. The voracious golden toads have terrifying jump abilities and are rare earth attributes. Then someone asks him to look at something. When he looks at it, he asks, "What is it?" The man explained that it was fennel-scented grilled locust skewers. They're the voracious golden toad's favorite food, and the man said Gao Peng can try to feed the frog. But Gao Peng eat it, which made the man shocked. Then he said it was so fragrant, the sauce rich and fragrant. It also has just the right amount of oil in the fresh meat, which is wrapped by a crispy exterior, and he can give the roasted locust a 10 out of 10. Feng Zhu called his name in shock, like the other people in the room too. The frog got angry, then Gao Peng looked at it and said relax because he just taste testing it for him. And it was a pity that there was a bit too much fennel. Then Gao Peng give it to the frog. The frog uses its tongue to get it, then it eats it. Gao Peng thinks the voracious golden toad must have a very powerful stomach because it can eat the metal skewer. Then he asks Feng Zhu which aspect of the voracious golden toad the military wish for them to improve. Feng Zhu responded that its defense and its ability to digest things. Also, improving the voracious golden toad's abilities will be good as well. Then Feng Zhu opens a virtual data and said that are the results of his research. Feng Zhu found that the voracious golden toad has a rather decent affinity for 2 attributes. It was earth and fire. Feng Zhu also said he extracted a bit of the voracious golden toad skin and combined it with various fire-attributed materials, and he found out that its flesh has a high affinity with fire orchid vines. The voracious golden toad flesh showed no signs of rejection when fire orchid vine extract was introduced to it, but fire orchid vines have very gentle fire attributes, so just relying on that is insufficient. Gao Peng thinks there is a path that uses fire orchid vines as a supporting ingredient. That path of evolution is also towards the fire attribute, and Gao Peng thinks they just need to modify the formula a bit. Then Gao Peng tells Feng Zhu that perhaps they could approach the voracious golden frog from a different angle, which made Feng Zhu shocked because Gao Peng already come up with an idea in such a short amount of time. Gao Peng made an example and said they can view the voracious golden toad as the main food ingredient, and the fire orchid vines as a seasoning. But the flavor of fire orchid vines isn't too strong enough, so it's hard for the flavor of their seasoning to permeate into the toad. In that situation, they could consider a different cooking approach, such as using a stronger ingredient or cooking the meat with more heat. Feng Zhu was confused by the words of Gao Peng and asked if he heard him right. Gao Peng said yes. Then Feng Zhu asks how about the red-faced demon chili. Gao Peng said they can give it a try. Then Feng Zhu immediately asks his assistant named Xiao Zheng to get the batch of red-faced demon chilies in the association's warehouse. Zheng said yes, but he thinks comparing evolution to cooking is too much and the method of their city's youngest monster breeder is stupid. Feng Zhu was looking at Zheng while thinking although Zheng has potential, they need more talented individuals to join them in order for them to broaden the path for monster breeders, and Feng hoped Zheng will understand it one day. Zheng comes back with the ingredients, and when they look at it they think it's well preserved. Zheng looks at Gao Peng while thinking he chose the best one because they don't want Gao Peng to blame the ingredient's quality when he fails. Feng Zhu put the red-faced demon chili into a dissolving machine. When the chili dissolves, Feng Zhu said judging from the chili color its properties seem a bit too strong. Then Feng Zhu ordered Zheng to get some su wood, king ginseng, and moon. Gao Peng thinks they still need a few more ingredients, but it would be too deliberate if he says something now, and Gao Peng decided to wait for the result of the experiment. Feng Zhu got the liquid chili and said the evolution solution is completed. Then Feng Zhu injected into the voracious golden toad. The chili made the frog's body make a bubble, then the frog exploded. Feng Zhu said it's a failure, then he ordered Zheng to test the blood and the flesh to find out the reason for the failure. Zheng said the reason for the toad exploding should be because it absorbed too much of the fire element. The explosion was a result of conflicting energies, and there's a lot of unmerged fire element residue in the flesh and blood. Feng Zhu was thinking about the conflicting energies. Then Zheng said that based on the result of Feng Zhu's previous experiments, if there was a chance for success, he should have been able to at least pick up some trace of the fire element from the blown up pieces or flesh that was partially merged with the fire element. Zhang also said if that was the case, all they have to do is to keep improving the formula and adjust the amount of materials needed. Then Zhang looked at Gao Peng and said if the energies conflicted with one another it means that they did not merge with each other at all, which means the experiment is a total failure. Feng Zhu said it was too early to decide what they thought is incorrect. Then Feng Zhu said they should continue the experiments because they need more data, which made Zhang angry. Feng Zhu tells Zhang to stop and orders him to bring another set of ingredients. The second experiment exploded and the third experiment was the same. The people in the examination room said they already failed 3 times, and surely they have a problem with the formula. The other man said maybe Zhang was right about the experiment being incorrect. And the other man said Gao Peng is still too young, and Gao Peng's skill was a bit over-exaggerated, while Gao Peng is behind them and heard everything. Gao Peng smiled, then tells Feng Zhu that they have tried so many ingredients already, and he feels that maybe using the devil chilies as the sole main ingredient is insufficient. Perhaps they could add in another main ingredient. Feng Zhu thinks the 2 main ingredients are a bold idea. Gao Peng asks Feng Zhu if he believes in him, and if he did, he just needs to believe in him one more time. Feng Zhu asks what Gao Peng plans on using for the other main ingredient. Gao Peng responded black soft soil because its earth attributes soil material that has the properties of dampness and yin nature. Gao Peng explained that they can have the voracious golden toad consume it, in order to protect the toad's internal organs. After that, they can add some sparrow saliva wood to the list of supporting ingredients for the devil chili, and he said wood feed fire, and fire creates earth. Feng Zhu looked at the flesh of exploded toad and said mutually reinforcing and neutralizing each other. Then Feng decided to give Gao Peng idea a shot. The other man was holding the successfully evaluated solution of chili and soil. Then the other researcher put the chili and the soil into the exploded toad skin. Zhang checked the result and said the fire element has successfully assimilated into the flesh, and the amount is substantial. Feng Zhu was happy because it was effective. Gao Peng asks Feng Zhu why don't they proceed to live testing, since many of their ingredients must be consumed, and they won't actually know their result till then, and simply experimenting on the monster's flesh won't be enough. Feng Zhu immediately agree. Gao Peng was holding the mixed ingredient while saying even though they never cut off too much of the flesh, and anesthetize the voracious golden toad each time in hopes of full recovery. The toad is still a little pitiful. Gao Peng asks them to feed it some locust skewers later. Then he injects the ingredients into it. The toad's body released a lot of fog, which made the people in the place cough. Gao Peng said they already figured out the correct amounts of each ingredient. The rest is all pretty routine. He just need to add in the remaining ingredients at the right time. Then Gao Peng said they all can go outside first. Feng Zhu coughed and said no need because he wanted to observe the reactions by staying close by. Gao Peng gave the other mixture of ingredients to Feng Zhu and said he'll go get some air outside. Gao Peng was outside and said the demon chilies sure have a pungent smell, and he wondered if he was acting natural enough because the other researcher shouldn't know that he already knew the formula based on the suggestions he gave them. Gao Peng also knows that the formula was actually experimented on by Feng Zhu. Still, he needs to be careful because it'd be a pain if someone with ill intentions find out. The experiment is the first research conducted on the toad, so there's no explanation as to why normal high school students like him knew the formula before they even started. Suddenly someone was running out of the room because of the red fog. Gao Peng looked around and saw the red fog. Gao Peng knows that the experiment was a success. The fog comes out of the frog and successfully evolved. Zhang excitedly said the dual attribute of the fire and earth was succeeded. Gao Peng looks at the frog and notices that the fire attribute is in it. But it doesn't seem to have dual attributes, and in order to use it as soon as possible, his plan is the only method they could use. The voracious golden toad's new name is Magma Fire Toad. It was level 19 and its grade was excellent. The toad attribute is fire, and its weakness is water type. The toad description said it evolved from the voracious golden toad. In order to suit the evolutionary pathway, its earth attribute was discarded for it to become a fire attribute monster. In the process of evolution, great damage was done to its body. A large amount of its muscle was corroded by the fire element, causing its strength and jumping ability to be reduced by varying degrees, and its evolutionary potential has also been weakened. Meanwhile, at the front lines north of Chang'an City, the military was readying their tanks, and one military announced that their target has reached the district and they need to prepare for a battle. The military checked their telescope and saw that the locust swarm was flying toward them. The military leader ordered his team to use the white phosphorus incendiary bombs. The tanks attacked the locust and killed it. One military said the white phosphorus bombs are effective. The leader said it was great and they need to follow the rhythm and press on. Suddenly the leader was shocked because he saw that the locust is using the sandstorm thing again. The sand made a tornado and one of the militaries said the incendiary bombs have been blown back by the sandstorm. The leader said the locust swarm has started using the sandstorm and he ordered the militaries to stop using the incendiary bombs. One military asks his companion if they can't use the incendiary bombs and what else they can do. His companion reloaded his gun and said there are countless civilians behind them and they should shoot and kill those disgusting bugs. Suddenly the magma-fired toads arrived on the battlefield. The magma-fired toads are ready to their position, then use their fire aroma to kill the locust swarm. The military was confused to see that the sandstorm stopped, and one of the militaries asks their leader where the big toads come from. The leader responded that it was someone from the university with great knowledge to deal with dead leaf locusts. Then he ordered the military man to stop calling it the big toads. The locust swarm was flying toward the toads to attack. But before the locusts can get close, the toads attack the locusts using fire coming out from its mouth, which made the locusts get burned and fall to the ground. The toad grabs the locust in the ground using its tongue and eats it. The military was shocked because the toads wiped out hundreds of locusts in just one attack. The military leader said with the red stream toads, their brothers won't have to risk their lives to fight the monsters, and he said the person who researched the toads is really great. After the incident, outside the apartment, the grandmother asks Old Han if his granddaughter also participates in the special training. Old Han tells the grandma not to mention it because her granddaughter was eliminated and his granddaughter's dad gave her a good lecture. Suddenly a truck of military stopped in front of them. Then the militaries line up outside the truck. Old Han wondered which family is this military going, and he thinks based on their direction they are going to the 6th floor. And maybe the military is there to find Gao Peng because there was a similar car that came to pick Gao Peng up before. The grandma said she remember once walking her dog in the neighborhood. Then she saw Gao Peng coming home with a skeleton, which made Old Han scared because he thought it was a ghost. Grandma Chen also said she saw that skeleton also flashes ghost fire around its body. Old Han asks Grandma Chen if she has seen Gao Peng living upstairs in her building. Suddenly another grandma sitting on the bench with her beast said the skeleton is Gao Peng's imperial beast, and it looks scary, but in fact, the skeleton protects people and takes care of them. The grandma and Grandma Chen look at each other pissed. The grandma on the bench asks her beast to put the thread into the needle. Her beast put the thread into the needle and give it back to his owner. Old Han said her beast is so capable, but he never heard her say her beast's name. Grandma said she can't name her beast. Meanwhile, Gao Peng is outside his apartment door shocked because the militaries are there for him. The colonel hands something to Gao Peng and said according to the agreement that President Feng made with him on behalf of the military, a crystal core of a leader-level thunder monster is the reward for the successful research evolution of the red stream fire toad. Gao Peng said thank you. Then the colonel said he volunteered to give the reward to him because he wanted to meet Gao Peng in person. Then the colonel fixed his position, then said on behalf of his comrades, he'd like to express his high respect and sincere gratitude to Gao Peng. Then the colonel said special representatives are those comrades who have already lost their lives in the operation, and it is the bounden duty of soldiers to defend their home and their country. They are not afraid of dying, but they are worried about not dying properly. After Gao Peng receives the reward, he goes inside his apartment and looks at the military outside his window. Gao Peng looked at his hand and said it is seen that while covering the system, he should try to participate in more experimental projects in their new area to help the front line. But Gao Peng said the system is only an aid. The most important thing is to improve his own strength as soon as possible, in order to protect himself, and then he'll also have the right to speak in the experiment. Suddenly Gao Peng was shocked. When he looked down he saw Da Zai hugging his leg. Gao Peng hugged Da Zai and said Da Zai is so conscientious as to comfort him. Then Gao Peng stand up and said the main material has just arrived and he was going to help Da Zai upgrade his quality today. Gao Peng start cooking the ingredients, and when it was cooked he ordered Da Zai with a creepy smile to drink the bowl of soup he made, which made Da Zai shake in fear. Gao Peng put down the soup, and when Da Zai smelled the soup his eyes shine. Then Da Zai drinks the soup. Suddenly Da Zai let go of the empty bowl which made it break. Then Da Zai's body released a thunderlight. The thunderlight that Da Zai released got stronger, which made Gao Peng back off a bit. When the thunderlight faded, Da Zai was burned and dizzy, which made Dummy shocked and confused. Dummy walks toward dizzy Da Zai and checks him. Then Dummy got an idea. Dummy goes to the refrigerator and gets something. Dummy gets the cedar pine needles and gives it to dizzy Da Zai. Gao Peng touched Dummy's shoulder and assured Dummy to don't worry and that they should let Da Zai stay alone for a while. Dummy was confused while eating the cedar pine needles he get for Da Zai. Gao Peng look at Da Zai and Dummy and thinks it's a good idea to settle Silly's contract as well. Then Gao Peng calls Silly to come to him, but Silly flies away from him, which made Gao Peng silent for a moment. Gao Peng showed a juice to lure Silly to come to him. Silly immediately hugs the juice and Gao Peng thinks all his three beasts are foodies. Gao Peng pokes his thumb finger with a needle to make it bleed. Then he put his thumb finger to Silly's head, which made Silly confused. Gao Peng closed his eyes and saw that Silly's consciousness is still a bit weak, but Silly's consciousness fly toward him, and Gao Peng thinks Silly had gotten bold because he was actually willing to approach him on his own initiative. Gao Peng also thinks all those delicious foods he gave to Silly didn't go in vain. Then Gao Peng touched Silly's consciousness, and then Gao Peng asks to be his partner. Suddenly Silly's consciousness showed a contract paper to Gao Peng to make a contract, and Gao Peng assured Silly that if he's willing to be his partner, he'll give him the power to stop fearing everything. Silly's consciousness said he don't want power and he just want juice. Gao Peng said he'll give him a lot and lots of juice. Silly consciousness thinks for a while and burned the contract paper, which means the contract between Gao Peng and Silly was completed. The next morning, the grandma on the bench last day was sleeping in her room with her beasts. Suddenly someone called her name Xiang to get up because it was time for breakfast. When Xiang opened her eyes, she saw her parrot looking at her while saying, "Xiang, get up and have breakfast," again and again. Xiang praised her parrot and said after the old man left, the parrot has been with her and she was thankful for that because since her daughter's accident, she's not been in good spirits, and it was hard for the old man to take care of her meal every day. Even though the old man is suffering, the old man still get up on time every day for her and then wake her up. Unfortunately, when she got better and was able to take care of the old man in turn, the old man left. At that time Xiang didn't know how to live, and she didn't want to live anymore. Fortunately, the words the parrot imitated gave her the motivation to continue living. Then Xiang thanked the parrot for staying with her, but she said the old man has been waiting for her too long, and she has to go to him. Suddenly someone called her name, and then the old man's ghost hold her hand and said he'd come to see her. Xiang cried because she didn't expect to see her old man. The old man up his little finger and tells Xiang that this time they'll never be apart again. Xiang crossed her little finger to the old man and said they'll never be apart again. But in reality, Xiang was holding the parrot's beak in her bed, and the parrot is lying in the bed with her dead. Meanwhile, Gao Peng was sleeping peacefully in his bedroom when he heard Da Zai in pain. Gao Peng sits up and asks Da Zai what was wrong, and when Gao Peng looked at Da Zai, he was shocked to see Da Zai rolling on the ground while saying he feels itchy and hurt. Gao Peng grabs Da Zai and wonders if there was something wrong with his evolution, and when he checks Da Zai's mouth, he was shocked because Da Zai's teeth changing, and Gao Peng wonder how the centipede can still change its teeth, and he thinks it could be that the genes of the centipede have mutated after the mutation of the world. Gao Peng patted Da Zai's head and said the current form of Da Zai can no longer be judged by common sense, and he assured Da Zai that the pain is necessary for growing up, and Da Zai needs to bear with the pain. Gao Peng stands up and opens his door, then he called Silly, which made Silly and Da Zai confused. Silly flies toward Gao Peng's head and stays on it. Gao Peng wonders what evolutionary path should he choose for Silly, and he wonders if he should go as the support or should he go for killing power. Gao Peng thinks if he chooses the evolutionary route by using the hollow wood he found last time as the main material, Silly will become a dual attribute wood spirit jellyfish with healing powers and spatial abilities. However, Gao Peng thinks if the space system's attack increased, the general attacking power will be very frightening, and if he gave up the attack line and evolved Silly into a support type, he'll always feel a little unwilling about it. But Gao Peng thinks such a training process will require time and effort. Also, money is certainly not a small amount, and if he evolves Silly to support, the process will be relatively faster. Gao Peng decided to take the support route and upgrade the wood spirit jellyfish. Gao Peng thinks when he becomes stronger, he can cultivate any type he wants, but for now, he'll go with the best one that suits him. When Gao Peng goes outside, he saw people talking about something. Then the people look up in the sky and said it's a spirit, it must have come to pick Granny Chen. Gao Peng wondered what they are talking about, and when he looked up at the sky he saw a big bird flying in the sky. Gao Peng saw that the bird monster's name is Soul Guardian, it was level 25 and its quality is perfect. The Soul Guardian attribute is the soul system, and its description said that the powerful soul obsession allows them to reside in the mortal world, in different forms, and return to the underworld when their obsessions are complete. One old man said he saw the two bodies on the iron frame fly up as points of light, and he said the parrot and the man were obviously dead, while Gao Peng thinks it was Granny Chan who passed away. Then Gao Peng remembers something. He remembers that there is also a gray plate striped spider at Granny Chen's house, and after the death of the master, the beast is no longer restrained, and the beast has to choose to go into the mountains and return to nature. But Gao Peng knows that the beast will change their temperament and become aggressive and attack other humans. Then Gao Peng started to run because he must find the spider quickly. After running, Gao Peng finally arrived at Granny Chen's apartment door. Gao Peng said the door is locked and there is no movement inside the door. Then he wondered where could the spider hiding. Then remember that according to the habit of the gray plate striped spider it should be in the ceiling. Then Gao Peng looked up and found the spider looking at him too. Gao Peng called Da Zai. Then Da Zai walked toward Gao Peng, then he wrapped around his body around Gao Peng. The spider shook in fear and fell to the ground, which made Da Zai and Gao Peng confused. The spider looks at them shaking in fear, and it remembered his owner Old Chen's words to him. Old Chen said she was too old and going to die soon, so she won't sign a contract with him. Then Old Chen patted his head and asks for his forgiveness for not giving him a name, and Old Chen explained it because of some reason so that he can meet a new fate. Suddenly Gao Peng patted his head and said he must be having a hard time. Then Gao Peng smiled and asks the spider if he would like to just come home with him. The next day, Gao Peng walking to the street confidently with Da Zai and Old Chen Spider, which makes the people who can see them confused, and the other people whispered that Gao Peng is the head of the 5 poison sect. Gao Peng thinks he's lucky because he got a tank that he was lacking right now, though it seems ridiculous to use a spider as a meat shield. Gao Peng knows that there's an evolutionary pathway for the striped gray plate spider to be a tank, and the ingredients aren't too hard to find. Gao Peng clicks the elevator while thinking about after he establishes a blood contract and quickly strengthens the spider. He'll soon receive plenty of soul power, and with the soul power provided by Da Zai and Silly, he'll be able to establish a blood contract with Dummy in no time. Gao Peng realizes that he shouldn't have promoted Dummy's grade early because now it will be hard to collect the soul power needed to promote it. Gao Peng arrives at Fei Peng Familiar Studio and greets Quang Quan. Quang Quan greets him back and called him Little Boss. Gao Peng wonders why Quang Quan calls him Little Boss when Quang Quan usually calls him Master Gao. Gao Peng feels something is very wrong. Quang Quan said long time no see Little Boss, and she tells Gao Peng that there's been a lot of people who had been inquiring about him. There are also customers who specifically want to see him, even though she's telling them to wait because he's not free. Also, Quang Quan angrily said he can't get in touch with Gao Peng. Gao Peng tells Quang Quan that he has some time today, so they should talk things out nice and slow. Then Gao Peng hand a piece of paper to Quang Quan and he asks Quang Quan nicely to prepare the ingredients in the paper, then he'll treat her to milk tea later. Quang Quan snatched the paper angrily and walk away, which made Gao Peng breathe properly. At the laboratory, Gao Peng making a contract with Old Chen's spider. Gao Peng tells the spider to not be sad, then he asks it to become his partner, and Gao Peng promises to give it a loving home. The spider agrees, then the contract between Gao Peng and the spider is successfully made. Gao Peng pat the spider's head and said that they can start with its evolution now. The timer reached 0 and alarmed. Gao Peng turned off the timer while looking at the ingredients he made. Gao Peng put the other mixture on the tube and look at it carefully. Gao Peng said the mixture is a success while the spider is in the container behind him. Gao Peng turned to the spider and said its body color is gray and its stripped gray plate spider. After evolving, it will become a gray armored spider, and since Silly and Dummy both end with a Y, Gao Peng named the spider Stripey. Then Gao Peng walked closer to Stripey with the mixture and explained to Stripey that the mixture is an evolution solution he made specifically for him, and once Stripey bathe in it, Stripey will become stronger. Then Gao Peng dropped the mixture inside the container where Stripey is. Stripey shouted in pain because its skin peels off. Gao Peng looked at Stripey and said soul transfer hurt. But that is only a fraction of the pain that Stripey is experiencing right now. Gao Peng also believes that Stripey can do it because that pain is something Stripey must experience in order to become stronger, and they can only rely on themselves to overcome it. Suddenly Quang Quan opened the laboratory room and called Gao Peng. Quang Quan said the customer arrives, a customer who looks very rich. Gao Peng responded that he'll be out in seconds while thinking he has one more mouth to feed now, so he needs to earn some money. Gao Peng come out and look at the customer waiting confused because he saw a commander tier familiar. Gao Peng give the lab coat to Quang Quan and said he will attend to the customers. Then he asks Quang Quan to stay in the laboratory to pay attention to the little spider's evolutionary process. Then Gao Peng tells Quang Quan if he sees the container on the table, the moment the liquid turns into a lighter color, she just needs to pour the contents of the test tube into the container, and Quang Quan agrees. Then Gao Peng walked toward the customer and shake hands with the customer. The customer said he had long heard of Gao Peng good name, and it was a pleasure to finally meet him in the flesh. Then the customer introduces himself as Lu Zai. Lu Zai said he is currently a freelancer, and previously he owned a small herb garden, which was sadly destroyed by brutal gray devil spiders, and his garden is still under repair. Gao Peng asks if Zai means the City East's herb garden. Zai said is right, and he said he didn't think that Gao Peng would know his little garden as well, and he feel honored, which made Gao Peng feel that he was well known. Zai said Gao Peng seems unaware, and he said he was invited to the military's celebration banquet just a while back, and during the banquet director, Chen himself said that Gao Peng had definitely been the key contributor to the magma fire toad's research process. Zai said he have a familiar he want to strengthen, so he brought it here. Zai figured that Gao Peng is very trustworthy. The man opened the curtain of the cage of the beast and showed an angry dog beast. Gao Peng was shocked because it was Ebony Nighthound Beast. According to what is known, all dog-type monsters have the possibility of evolving into Ebony Nighthounds. It's a possible alternate evolutionary path for dog-type monsters, and the species has jet black fur that perfectly blends in with the darkness of the night. It is also capable of absorbing most wavelengths of light, making it the perfect assassin under the cover of the night. Also, it makes it an ideal watchdog that many manor and garden owners choose it as their familiar. Zai said he's aware of the way Gao Peng charges his fees, and for the commander tier familiars the price is determined by Gao Peng, and Gao Peng should feel free to state his price. Gao Peng thinks eliminating the 2 rarest and strongest paths for dog evolution and eliminating 5 more paths that require materials that are too rare or procedures that are too complex, they have now left with 13 paths. Gao Peng tells Zai that promoting the grade should be no problem at all. He even has quite a few evolutionary paths for Zai to choose from, but the strength of the familiar after evolution will differ accordingly as well. Zai said he understands and he would like to have the most expensive one. Then Gao Peng said it will be 5,000 alliance credits, which made Zai shocked, but Gao Peng held Zai's hand and said Zai had a great decision. Suddenly something broke inside the laboratory. Gao Peng turned to look at it and said Stripey name. Gao Peng immediately runs toward the laboratory and asks Quanquin what happened, but Quanquin is shaking in fear while pointing at the evaluated Stripey. Gao Peng calmed down and saw that Stripey wild evolution was successful, and Stripey monster's name changed to a gray armored spider, but Gao Peng shouted at Stripey because Stripey breaks the lab equipment and it even scared Quanquin. Then Gao Peng patted Stripey's head and he tells Stripey that no matter how strong he becomes in the future, he needs to remember how to control his strength, which made Stripey shy and hide his face using his claws. But Stripey claws hit the wood in the ground which flies to its head and made Stripey collapsed. Gao Peng wonders why all the familiars under him seem silly, and he remembers the people saying that a man being known by the company he keeps, but Gao Peng doesn't want to believe it. Then Gao Peng asks Stripey to go to his office first, and he orders Stripey to stay quiet in the office and don't touch anything. Stripey agrees and walks to the office, leaving Gao Peng wondering why Stripey crawling sideways. Gao Peng helps Quanquin stand up and apologize to her. Then he asks Quanquin to order him a new container that is larger than the previous one, and she should place the fees for it on his tab. Gao Peng also asks Quanquin to prepare the material needed for the Ebony Nighthound's evolution because he already made an appointment with the customer to start the experiment next week. Gao Peng also ordered Quanquin to call someone to clean the laboratory and put it on his tab too. Since the apparatuses are broken, he can't continue his work anymore, so he's going to head back for now. Quanquin agreed and said they need to spend money again. Gao Peng walks out to the building with Da Zai and Stripey who can't move faster, while realizing that his house is getting more and more crowded, and it is time to move to a house with more space. Gao Peng also thinks it would be best if it's on the outskirts of the city because it would be more convenient for him to leave town for training or gather medicine. Gao Peng decided to contact the middleman first. Gao Peng and Da Zai stop and look at confused Stripey. Gao Peng wonders if did he do the evolution incorrectly, and he wonders why Stripey evolved into a crab instead. Gao Peng kicks Stripey legs and shouts at it to walk properly because he is a spider, not a crab, which made Stripey confused. Gao Peng sighed and just scratched his head in frustration. Gao Peng and his beast go to the I Love Houses company. The salesperson named Xiao Liu welcomed Gao Peng to the company and said she was the one who talked to him on the phone earlier. Gao Peng asks Xiao if they can go take a look at the house now. Xiao agrees and said that she also provides transportation. Then she asks Gao Peng to follow him while explaining that according to his requirement, Gao Peng like a large villa on the outskirts of the city which comes with a garden, a basement, and has clean surrounding. Xiao also said there is a villa that fits Gao Peng requirements. Then Xiao handed the tablet to Gao Peng and tells Gao Peng to take a look at the pictures of the villa. Gao Peng looked at the picture and saw beautiful houses. Xiao explains that the villa has no basement, but the surrounding area belongs to the same property, so it's still possible to build his own basement. Gao Peng pointed to the tablet and asked Xiao which villas were located. Xiao responded that it's near the prosperous Dragon Lake area, and the price is very cheap. It's only 2,000 alliance credits. Then Xiao whispered that it was cheap because it was in the outskirts, and there was very little supervision of the area. Xiao also said the villa has a large portion of the surrounding land that is included too, and it's especially suitable for his requirements. Gao Peng said to wait because he had a question. Then he pointed to the tablet and asked if the picture is updated. He also asks if the picture was taken before the cataclysm because the plants in the background aren't mutated. Gao Peng showed the tablet to Xiao and asked Xiao if she's withholding important information from him. Xiao nervously said no and explained that an isolator villa from before the cataclysm that comes with a few dozen acres of land is practically impossible to find within Chang'an City nowadays, and she said the villa is only 2,000 alliance credits, so it's really cheap, even though it's pretty secluded. Also, Xiao said there's an expressway right at the foot of the hill, so if Gao Peng buys a car, it'll be really convenient to get around. Gao Peng wonders why the scene of deception feels so familiar to him, and he thinks it sounds like there are a bunch of hidden problems like safety concerns and renovation issues. Gao Peng also knows that according to the pictures, the villa costs at least 3,000 to 4,000 alliance credits, and since there was plenty of unrest during the early stages after the cataclysm, the villa in the picture would have either been fortified into a fortress or deserted and left ruins. Also, Gao Peng thinks if the actual villa looks at least 60% as it does in the picture, he will be more than satisfied. Gao Peng realizes that regarding the matter of his safety, it's a problem for anyone else, but with the familiars he's raising at home, those monsters would most likely become an additional meal for his beast. Xiao called Gao Peng, who was currently busy in his dark thought. Xiao said the property actually going for a rather low price because the seller is making a loss from the deal. Gao Peng agreed and said they should go and take a look at the villa right now. Xiao and Gao Peng walk outside. Suddenly Xiao stops walking and stare at Stripey. Xiao leans down to look closer at Stripey and then she asks Gao Peng if it was his familiar because his little crab is very cute and he had good taste, which made Gao Peng angry and said it's not a crab, it's a spider. Suddenly he hears a camera click and he saw a shadow hiding in the wall behind him. Then he turns around to check, which made Xiao confused. But when he looks properly at the wall, there was no one there. Gao Peng tells Xiao it's nothing and maybe he saw it wrong. Then they proceed to enter the bus without knowing someone is looking at them. The man said he finally found the famous young master Gao Peng. The bus arrives at the place and then they come down. Xiao said they arrived and she pointed to the villa and said that was the villa she showed to him, which made Gao Peng shocked. Gao Peng comes closer to the villa and realizes it looks similar to the one in the pictures, and only the exterior wall is a little worn down. Gao Peng and Xiao enter the villa, then Gao Peng saw that there isn't much dust inside the house. Then he asks Xiao if the seller maintains this place frequently. Gao Peng also saw that it was fully prepped with furniture, and the only problem is the furniture is an old model. The table, chairs, and floorboard need some repair, but Gao Peng knows that the furniture inside the villa costs a fortune. Even if its location isn't good, it's impossible to sell the villa only for 2,000, and he feels it's too weird. Suddenly someone asks if he is Gao Peng, which made Gao Peng and Xiao shocked and look at the person at the door. Xiao introduces Gao Peng to the villa's seller named Liu. Liu laughed and said he hurried over when he heard Gao Peng wanted to take a look at the house. Gao Peng asks why Liu hurried over, especially for him, and Gao Peng also asks if they know each other. Liu responded that in their industry, who hasn't heard Gao Peng's name, and he is the ace up in director Feng's sleeves, the hero behind last time's military action. Liu gave his business card to Gao Peng and said he's also selling familiars and that if Gao Peng has any intention of collaborating, he can give him a 20% discount. Gao Peng takes Liu's business card and thinks that Liu really knows how to do business. Liu asks Gao Peng if he liked the villa, and he said he hires someone to clean the villa every season, and if Gao Peng want to buy it, he'll only need to pay a maintenance fee, then he can move in straight away. Gao Peng said the price is indeed a very good bargain, but there is one problem. Although the location isn't good, the villa is worth at least 4,000 alliance credits. Gao Peng said 2,000 alliance credits are too much below the market price, and he asks Liu if he could share his reason with him. Liu touched one of the appliances and said the villa was actually bought for his parents to enjoy their retirement, and he said his parent is villagers who weren't used to city life, so he bought a villa on the outskirts for them. Liu said his parents worked hard themselves to the bone their entire lives for his sake, as their son, after he achieved some success in life. Liu naturally wanted his parents to enjoy the rest of their lives, but the wave of monsters ruined everything, and his parent didn't make it in time to enjoy anything, not even for a day. His parents slaved away their entire lives. Then Liu feels angry that his arms shake in anger. Then he calmed down and said he originally wanted to keep the villa as a memory, but he heard Gao Peng is looking for a house with similar requirements, so he asked the agency to recommend it to him at 2,000 alliance credits, and Liu tells Gao Peng that he can see the villa as his investment in him. Liu looked at Gao Peng and said he was not young anymore and his ability is limited. He doesn't have the chance to do everything he wants to do anymore, and young people like him are Chang'an City's future. Liu said he hoped the kind of tragedy that happened to them won't happen again in the future, which made Gao Peng silent for a second and remember his parents. Gao Peng thanked Liu for his trust and said he will buy the villa. The night comes. Gao Peng, Da Zai, and Stripey finally come home. Gao Peng opened his apartment door and called for Dummy and Silly, but Dummy and Silly were busy with their food. Gao Peng called silly and dummy because he bought nourishing food, especially for them, and Gao Peng said the taste of the food was much better than orange juice, yin cedar needle, or whatnot, which made silly and dummy quickly turn their heads. His beasts gathered to the table with foods that Gao Peng prepared. Suddenly someone said Gao Peng house is sure lively, and when Gao Peng looked at his door, he saw Tang Tang. Tang Tang wave at Gao Peng and greet him. Then she patted Da Zai while praising it because Da Zai leveled up. She pinched Da Zai's cheek and said Da Zai even grew teeth. She pinched Da Zai's cheeks even more because she wanted to check if there are any teeth that grew in the wrong direction, which made Da Zai look at Gao Peng for help. But Gao Peng turned around at it while talking at Da Zai using telepathy, and he said Da Zai need to bear with it for a while. Tang Tang stands up and asks Gao Peng if he bought a villa. Gao Peng responded that the news sure spread fast, but he said the villa still needs some renovating, so he won't be moving in immediately. Suddenly Tang Tang held Gao Peng's hand and said Gao Peng needed to make sure to invite her to his villa because there are lots of knocks to renovation, and Gao Peng doesn't have enough experience, so he needed to be sure not to get fooled, which made Gao Peng shocked and agree. Then she turns around to leave while saying the conversation between them is settled, and she has more things to do, so she'll be going now. Gao Peng said he was starting to question the reason why the villa is so cheap, but Tang Tang already closes the door. Tang Tang said she was done, and now she can very naturally buy a villa next door by coincidence. She also said that Gao Peng neighbor will still be her. The next morning, Gao Peng is hiding behind the tree with Da Zai, Silly, and Dummy. Gao Peng looked down and said they reached the border, and he thinks those bottle trees shouldn't be too far away. Gao Peng stepped on the leaves on the ground while thinking it is best if he can gather all the materials today because he only have 3 days of vacation and today was the last day. Also, he thinks if he can't gather all the wood space heart that he needs, he'll have to wait until next Monday before he has time to go out again, and that would delay things too much. Suddenly he hears something and look at it. He saw something jump at the branch of the tree, and he saw that it was the monster named Gray Sand Bobcat. It was level 13 and its grade is normal. Also, its attribute is wood. The Bobcat looks at them angrily, then jump off the tree. Gao Peng shouted at his beast that it was bad and that everyone should be careful. The Bobcat jumps branch by branch fast, which made the tree branch break. Then the Bobcat attacks Gao Peng, which made Gao Peng freeze in shock. But Dummy throws Da Zai away, then runs forward to attack the Bobcat, but the Bobcat avoided it and jumps away, then stare at its opponent. Dummy looked at the Bobcat and said he'll be the Bobcat's opponent. Then Dummy ran toward the Bobcat to attack it, which made the Bobcat shocked in fear and ran away, but Dummy used his heart power and caught the Bobcat. Dummy pulled the Bobcat close to him using his heart power, which made the Bobcat shake in fear. The Bobcat looked at Dummy, then Dummy punched the Bobcat in the ground, which made the ground break and the Bobcat dead. Gao Peng and Silly were behind Dummy shocked, and Gao Peng knows that the strength Dummy possesses now has increased by more than tenfold since Dummy Skull Ghoul Ape days, and he always knew that Dummy would be strong, but he never imagined that Dummy will be that strong. Dummy looks at his hand worried, then Gao Peng realizes that Dummy is still not used to its strength, but Gao Peng said he hasn't let Dummy fight ever since Dummy evolved and he realizes he needs to train Dummy more. Then Gao Peng called for Dummy to continue their adventure, which made Dummy look at him. Although Dummy didn't understand what Gao Peng was talking about that day, Dummy knows that from now on, Gao Peng is everything to him. Then Gao Peng and Da Zai walk while Da Zai is complaining if Dummy didn't through him, he would be the one who would protect him. Then Gao Peng just compliment Da Zai. After 3 hours of searching and going through several areas well suited for the growth of bottle trees, they finally found the trees. The last time Gao Peng saw green tree snakes were also in a bottle tree forest. Perhaps the green tree snakes have some preference for bottle trees. Dummy saw the snake wrapping around the tree branch and he grabbed it, then tore it apart. Then Dummy get the crystal core of the snake and give it to Gao Peng. Gao Peng look at it while thinking Dummy is a silly fella because the green tree snake crystal core is just a bonus and their main mission today is to find enough wood space hearts. But Gao Peng realizes that the crystal's core is also Dummy's token of appreciation that he can't possibly refuse. Gao Peng pointed to the bottle trees and asked Dummy to break it. Dummy looks at the tree and places a aura in his hands, then he punched the tree, which made the tree break in half. Gao Peng and Silly cheered Dummy while Da Zai look at them uninterested. Dummy punches the other trees while Gao Peng gets the wood space heart from the broken tree, and cheers Dummy to break more trees. Meanwhile, on the other side of the forest, 3 men were walking. One man asks their captain if Gao Peng is really around the forest. The captain said the information someone gave them won't be wrong and they should search for a bit more. Suddenly Captain Beast hears something. Then the mouse beast pointed in the other direction. One man asks his captain if Tudu noticed something. The captain hands Tudu a snack and responds that Tudu says there's a loud sound coming from the direction it pointed, but is not sure if it's the kid. Then the captain tells his teammates to go and check it out. The 3 men walked in the direction Tudu pointed, Then they heard something. One man asked why the sound was like the boxing practice that he used to do in the past. His companion called his name Yao Huan and said he's gone silly from all the boxing he did. Then he asked how could there be someone practicing boxing in the middle of the jungle. The captain tells Deng Sen that he shouldn't let his guard down and they can't ignore any possible clues. The captain also said they finally got a high-paying mission. And then the captain reminded Deng Sen that his sister's still waiting for her tuition fees, so his sister can go to school. That's why they need to complete their mission this time. The captain looked at his member and ordered them to move in the direction Tudu pointed and take a look quietly. The captain and his team finally arrive in the direction Tudu pointed and hide behind the tree. They saw Dummy punching the tree in half, which made them shocked and said the monster is good because it can break down a thick tree with just one fist. The captain showed a picture to his teammates and said they found their target while looking at Gao Peng, and wonder what Gao Peng's searching for within the tree trunks. Yao Huan tells his captain that the people who paid them to scout out Gao Peng familiar, and having a look at his familiar is enough. Yao Huan also said they need to go now because if they get any closer, they will get caught. Deng Sen agrees and tells their captain that it is clear that one isn't just any ordinary familiar, and the large centipede beside it isn't to be trifled with either. The captain signs his teammate to silent. Then the captain tells his young lads that occasionally get lucky and pick up dead bodies to get by. Haven't they had enough days like that? And with their skill set, they can't even enter the deeper parts of the Dark Ember Forest because it's too dangerous inside and filled with unknown terrors, and now that they are given an opportunity they should give it a try. The captain said there was something unusual about Gao Peng. Then the captain wondered why would a monster trainer create such a big ruckus in the forest, and if only they knew what kind of valuables are hidden inside the tree. Also the captain asked what the forest have in abundance. He said it was trees, and that means they have hit jackpot. The captain ordered Deng Sen to hide in the shadows and use his familiar to control Gao Peng, and he said Yao Huan and him will take care of the big one. The captain said they just test Gao Peng's fist, and maybe today is when their fortune comes, and perhaps they won't need to work hard ever again. The team made a move, which made Dummy and Da Zai alerted, and made Gao Peng ask Dummy and Da Zai what was wrong. Gao Peng noticed someone behind the tree, then he shouted to the people hiding to show their self. The captain nervously said they had been found out.